Randy, we've got a problem.
What?
They go.
Reality's here. He's trying to crash the party. Reality? Who let him in?
You're sad that people are mean? Well, I'm sorry. The world isn't one big liberal arts college campus.
I don't have an agenda like I want people to do something. I need them to do something. I want them to avoid irrationality.
I guess what interests me is just like what interests everybody else. It's just sort of what feels real.
That was totally wicked!
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of Real News on this morning time. It is 9:01 Central, 10:01 Eastern. We are right on time this October 7th. On a Wednesday, my name is Mr. Henry David Sean Thompson sitting over there. How are you doing this morning? I know that you have a choice in where to obtain your morning segment of news and dialogue and community building and strengthening and all that stuff from. We appreciate you choosing Real News to do it with. And we got a fantastic show lined up here for you today. We're going to dive right into it. There's a bunch of headlines we need to go over from the last couple of weeks, some opinions Sean and I have been trying to get off our chest. And this is going to be one of those days where, I don't know, it's kind of, I was telling Sean, it's a little bit of a loosey-goosey show. Kind of anything goes, kind of whatever y'all want to bring up. Maybe let the chats, the comment section lead the conversation, all that good stuff. Jonathan's already in the comment section, speaking of, saying as soon as I start watching, the Facebook video feed dies. What? Really? Already? I don't even know what you're talking about, man. Looks like we're going there. But if the Facebook video feed dies on you, hop over to YouTube if you want to, man. We're trying to get some people to go over to YouTube anyways. There's not a lot of action on YouTube, but you know, see what happens over there. Or you can watch us on Twitch or anything else. If you want to find all the other ways, you can check out the Real News information. Just realnewsradio.live, realnewsradio.live. That's your central landing page for all real news related things. Hey, let's do Greatest Audience in the Nation Appreciation segment real quick here.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, let's do it.
We reach out to y'all and see, hey, how you been doing? What you have going on in your life? What's been going on as I adjust my camera height here a little bit? What are you struggling with? What do you need help with? I don't know, man.
What's your favorite color?
Yeah, what's your favorite color?
What do you like on your pizza?
Yeah.
What's the worst Christmas present you ever got?
That's actually not a bad one. I kind of would want to know that. That is pretty good. What's the worst Christmas present you've ever got? Right? Tag that with your favorite sports team. Sean will love that, right? That was
nah, man. Sports.
Nah.
Hey, I just want to say this, Grant. I started hating sports way before it was cool.
That's true.
Like, way before, like, I could smell it coming, like, 10 years ago that it was going to get stupid. Like, as soon as they banned Chad Ochocinco from Twitter, I was done. I was like, you know what? This doesn't even make sense to me anymore. I can't live in a world like this. I need Chad Ochocinco live tweeting while his own defense is on the team or on the field, you know? And I was like, this is all too controlled. It's not going to be any fun anymore. Goodbye.
Right.
This has nothing to do with our show today. You might not even know who Chad Ochocinco is.
It's true, though, man. How do you make sense of all the craziness going on in the world if you don't have Chad Ochocinco live tweeting the game from the sideline? If you don't know what Sean is talking about, there was a football game several years back.
No. There was a time, a wild, wild west internet sports time, where you had major NFL stars who would tweet during the game.
During their own game, about their own game.
They like get a touchdown, run over to the sideline, and tweet. And I remember Chad Ochocinco had a Ustream channel.
Yeah.
And I man, one time I was watching it with like 90,000 other people, and I'm like, this is the future. And now what are we stuck in? The past.
Yeah, that's right.
They got those stupid after game interview. Anyway, I'm not going to get into it. I hate sports now, except for the Vols. Go Vols.
Sean did legitimate sports talk radio for a few years, so, you know, it is what it is. That's how we learned to love.
Legitimate is stretching that, but yes,
I did
it.
I mean, more legitimate than anyone else we know that's ever done it, right? It was legitimate. It was on the radio.
More legitimate than other people.
Yeah, that's true. So their greatest audience, the greatest audience in the nation appreciation just took this wild divergence, man. So, anyways, where we ended up with this today is to let us know the worst Christmas presents you've ever had before, you've ever received, and what you're struggling with, what you need help with, where you're at in life. I don't know, prayer concerns, you need a hot meal on your desk, on your front doorstep, any of this type of stuff. Hey, and I say that sometimes too. And we can try and help with some of the stuff in the Gateway Grocery, folks. We know this, folks. My Gateway Grocery. If you're in the Knoxville greater area, check those folks out. Big, awesome folks from back in the day. They deliver literally anything. I mean, literally anything. Knox News Sentinel, shut your mouth. Let's dive into this right now. Anyways, Knox News Sentinel is just throwing these ads up in my face like I didn't even want to read them. And let's start with this local headline here. Get into a little bit of the early stuff. A California venture capital firm buys downtown Knoxville hotel for $16.8 million. And I don't even really know if there's a story here, Sean. I just know that building in particular for a very long time has it's been somewhat of an interesting little situation. Are you kidding me right now? What? How many things do I have to? Nobody else can hear this, Sean. This is all right. I don't even care anymore. My headphones just exploded with the worst ad I've ever heard in my entire life.
You should just stick with the show notes.
That's what I'm gonna do. That hotel, though, man. You would know a little bit more about this than I do, but it's the old Hyatt Regency, opened in 1972 to much fanfare. It was one of the biggest and fanciest hotels in Knoxville at the time. And since then, I don't know. Some might say in the area this might become a little bit of an eyesore, although I've always appreciated the architecture of it. But
so first off, I'm going to get on WBIR a little bit for not having a picture of the outside.
Yeah, right.
That's so lame. It is a cool hotel. This is from this picture right here. You can see on the screen. You can kind of tell if you've been in Knoxville which hotel it is. It's the big Pyramid Hotel.
Yeah,
it's next to the Civic Coliseum. It used to be the best place to either have a nightcap or like go have a little drink with your date before you go out downtown. I thought it was they had a really nice little bar area. It was always a nice place to stay. If you were coming into town to see a concert at the Civic Coliseum, you could just walk over. But it's really struggled since downtown made its resurgence 10, 15 years ago. It's gotten less and less prominent as, people actually wanted to stay on Gay Street and stuff like that. And that's where the action was. The Civic Coliseum is not really where the action is anymore. So...
Well, apparently something's going to be done about it here, right? I mean, the hotel has changed hands several times in recent years. In March, it was BSPRT Knox Owner LLC in New York that paid $8.3 million for it. Before that, it was an Arkansas hotel group that paid $22 million for it. Goodness gracious, $22 million for this thing. And now it's a California-based venture capitalist firm, some billionaire out of Beverly Hills area that apparently just paid $16.8 million for it. It was acquired by an entity called Melrose Knoxville LLC and businessman Neil Katasa. So I don't know, man. Make of that what you will. That's basically the entire story. I just wanted to bring it to people's attention because it's always an interesting thing when I read headlines of California billionaire buys major property in Knoxville, right? Who knows what's going to happen with that?
I feel like somebody's buddy in California bought that so it wouldn't become an eyesore. Yeah, I really do, because I really don't feel like it's a good investment right now.
Yeah.
Unless they do something different with the Coliseum. Like, I mean, that's from like the 70s. It needs to be updated. There's all kinds of moving parts. Like, I feel like they've talked about the police department moving to a different location, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So if the police department moves to a different location, then the Civic Coliseum can expand. That gives like a whole like extra 3 blocks because we really need a venue bigger than 5. It's like a 5,000 person venue, but we need like something in between the Civic Coliseum and Thompson Bowling.
Yeah.
We need something in between. But I don't think it's like a super great investment. But I am glad someone bought it because it's out there all by itself and it's up on a big old hill. And if it started falling to pieces, it might make everyone sad.
Oh, I know, man, because everybody's going to see it every time they turn corner, Right. Hitting some of the Facebook comments here from a second ago, too. Kelly just said homeschool is going awesome this year. That's what I'm talking about. Jonathan said he's worried and looking over the stock markets. Jessica said she was so jealous, LOL, with a bunch of hearts. I don't know if she was being sarcastic or being sincere. Maybe we were talking about.
Was she jealous because I got to see Chad Okocinco's UStream channel?
I think that's what she was jealous of.
It was the best, dude.
oh, if only, right? That's and Jonathan said just a second ago when we were asking about what you're dealing with, what you're thinking about, he said that Metro deal about writing mask tickets. Also, the Metro deal about the transit station. Those are major topics. If you don't know what Jonathan is talking about, Jonathan's a guy that's super plugged into Nashville local politics here, among other things. This Tennessean headline that's linked second in the show notes is what he's talking about. So the Metro Council had a meeting last night. It was not open to the public. And this is the headline that came out of this, or so the Tennessean was reporting on. Nashville Mayor John Cooper may deputize city employees to enforce coronavirus health orders. So I'll say this much, okay? Everything is about perspective. Shine and I were talking the other day. What y'all have going on in Knoxville, at least you guys have some representatives, man, that are willing to say, consider doing something about the health board powers that may be overreaching. At least y'all are opening up to those conversations. I know some people are slightly frustrated. They may not have gotten everything they wanted to about dismantling that thing entirely or dissolving it down to something that could be workable or just relegating it back to an advisory position. But consider in the perspective, the grand scheme of things of dealing with this instead. Of that health board or some other board or maybe even your own council members coming out there and saying, you know what we're going to do? We're going to deputize every single city employee to just start issuing the same thing that our law enforcement should and could. That's basically what happened yesterday. At some point here, Facebook, Sean, if y'all want to jump in, let me know at any point too. But here's the basic story. Mayor John Cooper may now, hasn't done it yet, but may now, as of yesterday, deputize additional Metro employees to help enforce COVID-19 health orders as Nashville officials brace for the possibility of seeing increased violations as more prior restrictions are being reversed. Now that is a loaded sentence. This is one of the reasons why I hate the Tennessean so much, man. That was such an insanely loaded sentence. And this author, this journalist, is a good one. She's all over the place. She reports on almost everything in Nashville.
She framed really well in like 7 or 8 words. She framed it. That's what makes you a good journalist in 2020.
Right, but here's the other thing that's frustrating for me is as Nashville officials brace for the possibility of seeing increased violations as more prior restrictions are reversed. Well, wouldn't that lead someone logically to assume that there would be a decrease in violations if there's nothing to violate? Do you understand what I'm saying? I don't get the logic behind the sentence. It says as more prior restrictions are reversed. So if we reverse prior restrictions, that means we're removing violations or things that could potentially be violated. If we have less things that could potentially be violated, why would we see increased violations?
Because, Grant, there's 2 kinds of law right now. There's the law that's on the books, and then there's the moral law. The moral law would be violated because the statute law would change. That's and moral law is becoming a thing all day, everywhere. It's becoming a living, breathing concept, and that's really what she means. Yeah, she just doesn't know the right words for it.
Look, and I'll say this much again, one more time. If you're brand new to the program, if you've just stumbled across Real News, if you're one of these people that hops, skips, and jumps across one of our hashtags and you found us, such like Jessica found us one day in Pennsylvania. We love Jessica. Awesome. And you want to stick around with us, what we do here at this program is we try and create a community where we can have calm, cordial dialogue and even disagreements with those people that one day when we do have those disagreements, we are disagreeing amongst friends and neighbors, not amongst enemies. It's vitally important for conversations like this because I have a certain opinion about this whole mask situation that I would think most of the people that listen to this program do not agree with. I'll put it this way. Sean, pull up that Tennessean article again right now. All right. And look down at the picture that the Tennessean has linked. I think it's the same picture that y'all are going to see in your screen. If not, then let me know, Sean. But the article that I'm looking at shows that right down that lady playing violin and 3 or 4 paragraphs down, it shows that people standing outside somewhere and all huddled together. And there's that one lady with that American flag on, that shirt.
Yep, we're looking at it.
See, okay, so when I see this picture, this is just my perspective where I come from. I'm trying to be brutally honest here. A little bit of vulnerability, breeding vulnerability. When I see this picture, I look mask. I see this one lady who's just like, nah, screw it, mask. That lady to me is kind of like the lady that parks in the handicap spot, but not being handicapped. It's like, really? Like, I mean, dude, for real? Like, why are you the exception? Come on, man.
Because
like,
it's outside.
Well, no, I get that, but I'm just saying, like, if the way I see masks in this situation now, as I'm trying to put the point across, is I see it as I don't know, something you do for your fellow man. If everybody's in on it, it seems to be working type thing. So the point I'm making, Sean, is I tend to agree with where these people from the Tennessee are coming from.
See, that's so weird. The first thing I noticed in this picture is I saw that purple shirt that says Nash and then there's cursive writing underneath it. I was trying to figure out what that cursive writing said. Like, no joke. When I'm looking at this picture, I'm like, okay, cool, coffee. It must be like by a coffee shop. Oh, cool. Nash, gosh, what does that even say? That's what I was doing. And you were like, mask.
That's right.
So weird. Right. So weird. But it's all about the your Rorschach test, you know?
And here's where I think I would then end up agreeing with Kelly. So while I see a bunch of people that are trying to collectively work together and maybe have one united mind about defeating this thing called COVID or whatever, and then this one lady's like, nah, forget it. It doesn't apply to me. Well, why doesn't it apply to you? Are you better than me? Do you have some medical exemption? Maybe you do.
I'm better
I don't
than
know.
you. I mean, that's for sure. You know, like.
But Kelly said in Facebook, tickets for unmasked? No, nope. She says morality police, thought police, social media police. And that's where I'm saying too, I want to draw the line right there one more time. The fact that once you start enforcing this thing through a manner and mechanism by which people do not have a representative voice, they will not follow your edicts. Whether it be just because of the taboo of it or because they just do not want to be forced to do something. The way to convince somebody to do something that is either good for them or right for their fellow man is not by forcing them by the end of, I don't know, some citation or jail time or a gun barrel, God forbid, or something else. Now, moving on with the story, because we got confused by just the first paragraph.
No, but let me get in here too, Grant.
Yeah.
I feel like the concept of masks is tainted now. All it would have taken was some good marketing. Like if honestly, all these people who were super concerned about masks had just came to Trump and said, so how do you sell this to people who'd like to be left alone? How do you sell this to them?
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people who like to be left alone. There's a lot of people who are waiting for orders from on high, and that's how they live their life.
Oh, yeah.
That's how they live their life. And then there's other people who like literally hate orders from anyone, let alone orders from the ivory tower, right? But if masks had been about, if you wear a mask, this is how we keep businesses open.
Yeah.
This is how, but they closed businesses too. See, this, like, you gotta give people care. Like, the logic, the science, it doesn't matter, dude. It's gotta be a narrative that works.
Yes.
Because, I mean, science isn't really something that we all agree on, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, but like if masks had been sold as this is how we keep businesses open and not something you have to do.
Yeah.
Because we're not going to tell you what to do.
Exactly.
We already tell businesses what to do, so there's a little bit of like an Overton window acceptance of we need to tell businesses what to do, but we're not going to tell them to close because families need to make money, and adults can make decisions about whether or not they're sick and whether they should go out, or whether or not they're susceptible to being sick and whether they should go out. Because, I mean, you know, maybe that woman wasn't wearing a mask, Grant, because she's not sick. And she's not worried about spreading it.
Yeah, I hear you.
You know what I'm saying? Like, but we have moved the Overton window to people are stupid. People don't know how to take care of themselves. People won't know if they're sick. People will still go out if they're sick. We've moved the Overton window so far, we assume every single person is a moron when they're adults. When we trust these people to raise kids, we trust these people to literally do everything in our society, and our society seems to work pretty well. You know, the bridge doesn't collapse. The elevator goes up and down. When you flip the light switch, the lights come on, which is a heck of a lot better than every other country on the planet. Even in Spain, they have rolling blackouts in one of the major EU countries. So, like, all these people do jobs pretty well, and they're not just jobs that make them money, they're jobs that help our society function. All the things you have in your life are because of these people that we think are morons, you know? And if it had been sold as you're an adult, you do what you think is best, but coming from the leadership, if we want to keep mass open, if we don't want to overfill because honestly, it's not about keeping deaths down, Grant. It's about not keeping the hospitals overflowing. That's when it comes right down to it. They never told us we were going to prevent deaths. What they said is there will be more deaths if there's more people sick than we have hospital capacity.
Right.
And that's the only thing we know for sure. And if we treated people like adults, people would have acted like adults. I read the Tao Te Ching all the time. It says when you don't trust people, you make them untrustworthy.
Yeah, that's good right there.
Because you predictive programming people. People are susceptible to that, especially from leadership when they're looking up. So I just wanted to throw that Rorschach test made a lot of things pop up in my mind when you said all the I see this and all. It's like I was seeing all the stuff that I just threw out there, and I wanted to throw it out there, and I'll throw it back to you and Facebook for comments.
Well, and I think a large part of what people are having a problem with right now is this second and third sentence of, let me preface this by going in to say, okay, look, statistically speaking right now, what are we with the coronavirus? Well, I mean, 99.6% survival rate if you're in the demographic that's considered problematic, for lack of a better term, right?
So all like 200,000 people in the United States. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like, of a certain age and maybe some type of comorbidity going on, or maybe some type of previous diagnosis. I don't know. If you're struggling with something else, it's still about a 99-point-something% survivability rate. And I think the point I'm making is listen to these next couple of paragraphs that I'm about to read and keep this in the back of your mind of like, God forbid we have to deal with something here that has an even higher percentage of death than COVID would. I mean, like, seriously, God forbid that, because what in the world would we be doing? So COVID has led us to this point here where Metro Council approved legislation Tuesday night that gives the mayor the ability to authorize city workers. Again, this is just Nashville, but still authorize city workers who already have citation authority to assist in enforcement. I suppose that means actually all the other stuff that police law enforcement can do. Here's what Mayor Cooper said. Let's use all of our Metro resources that are working in the field right now to help public health get this super hard job done. Common sense efficiency measure is what Mayor Cooper called this. Let's use the entirety of the Metro resources, so essentially every Metro government employee possible, to enforce the standards that we want to be enforced. And I'm telling y'all one more time, some of the problem that people are having with this, again, I don't like to pretend to get into the science in this program. We're not qualified scientists. We don't necessarily know what we're talking about in that realm. We do politics here, okay? And in the realm of politics, what I'm saying is, in the minimal understanding that we have of the statistical analysis behind this, if it's just to the level of 99, call it 99.5%, I don't care, 99 point whatever percent it might be survivability, if anything is ever introduced that gets worse than that, and we're already talking about deputizing the entirety of Metro employees, I don't know what the next step is after that. I mean, you could speculate as to the next step, but I'm saying that's part of the reason why people are starting to have this fear. Some might say, well, it's an irrational, unfounded fear. I don't believe so even in the slightest. What are you talking about? Look at what's going on in Nashville right now. Again, back to what Shine said before. When you start treating people like this, though, you've already shot it. You've already shot your chance to be able to convince people. And if at the end of the day, what we're really trying to do is persuade people to the best cause or course of action because adults are adults and they're capable of doing it on their own, I don't know what we're doing here anymore. realnewsradio.live, as I hit some of these Facebook comments here in just a second. Jonathan just said, masks are more emotional than physical protection. Interesting. Kelly said all the masks that are littered all over the ground is trash. Yeah, that's another thing, too. She said, never mind all the doctors that have come out and said that masks are a placebo. Never mind the public isn't even wearing them correctly on their chin. That part's true. Under their noses, touching them and pulling down. All right, yeah, Kelly's got a good point there, too. Even the majority of the people that are wearing them are probably not wearing them correctly. Let me check the unified chat here, see if there's any YouTube comments. We're good there. realnewsradio.live, central landing page for all your real news related things. Sean, unless you want to get one more word in there.
I do actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Like this is, I think people, since they were not invited to be adults at this party and they were invited to sit at the kids' table and eat goldfish and the other cake, okay? Yeah. Because there are people making rules, right, who violate those rules all the time, But when other people break the rules, they get in trouble. They get their businesses shut down. They go to jail, whatever, Andrew Cuomo cannot wear a mask. Maxine Waters cannot wear a mask, you know.
Nancy Pelosi can
Nancy Pelosi, you get what I'm saying. So it's like the kids' table and the adult table. Nobody really cares about the rules, Grant. It's just as different in enforcement. And because people were treated as untrustworthy, every little action looks like they're just using COVID as an excuse to increase power. I mean, Nashville's a great example, right? You got a guy who promised to be a conservative. COVID happens. Now he wants 35% property, whatever it is, 34% property tax increase. He wants to make code enforcement people who go around and see if you have your air ducts clean and that your light switches work and that the plumbing goes the right way. Those people are now going to be issuing citations. Code enforcement people. And have the powers of police. Are they going to be bonded and insured?
Right? That's what I'm wondering.
Is that why they need the 34% property tax increase? Are they going to be armed? These are crazy questions.
Right.
And I think people are right to be weary. Because it just doesn't seem like it's a danger to me. But these government actions seem like that's a danger to me.
Well, and what is that first response going to be like when some random individual in plain clothes walks up to another Nashville citizen, Davison County citizen, and says, "You're not wearing a mask. Here's a citation for such and such. You're not wearing a mask. Go to this jail right now, or let me arrest you." What is that reaction going to be like? I don't know who you are. How do I know you're a Metro employee? What are we even doing here? What is this? What is this exchange that's happening right now? Right? I mean, I've been raised in a society for a very long time to see someone in a very specific, particular articles of clothing, a uniform, if you will. If you're not wearing said uniform and enforcing said law, would just overnight I'm supposed to accept this new premise, this new notion that just any random Joe Blow off the street, for my knowledge, is going to come start enforcing in the same way that these other people will? I don't know. Not only gonna
Grant, we got people moving to Nashville from all these big cities where the riots have been happening, where you've been locked down, where you've been forced to stay in your house for months and months, or your apartment for, that would be so awful, for months and months and months, and they moved to Nashville because they think they're going to have some freedom. I mean, like, just one of the most benign consequences is people may leave that city. And the renaissance that Nashville has been experiencing with an incoming of a bunch of people of means and wealth that really made Nashville into kind of a special place for the past decade or so. They're spending that capital on authoritarianism. And it's capital that's earned over a long period of time, and they're just spending it. And it's not like you just get opportunities like that every 50 years or so. You know, it may be, if they ruin Nashville, who knows how long. Cities can go into disrepair very quickly. Things can go bad really. Ask Detroit. And I'm not saying
sticking to Detroit too. I know.
And I'm not saying it would happen tomorrow, but like, why would you want to blunt the momentum of Nashville? Why wouldn't you want to just let Nashville be Nashville? Why don't you let Nashville be a city inside the great state of Tennessee? You know. And having code enforcement people going around bugging people who aren't wearing masks, especially. I mean, my thing is like, dude, if people aren't wearing masks, it's probably because they're not afraid of spreading it to anybody. It's probably not because they're being or whatever. I'm not going to curse. It's not because they're being mean. It's not because they don't care about you. It's not because they're trying to spread the disease. It's because they don't need to wear one. Or maybe they have a medical condition where they don't want to wear one. You know, but anyway, I'll move on from there. But I wanted to make the point about blunting the momentum of Nashville.
I hear you.
Because I know personally a bunch of people who are moving from other places to escape things like that to Nashville.
Switching topics here too. Again, realnewsradio.live, central landing page. Find all the real news related stuff here if you're new to the program. Moving into the national story section here. Every now and then there's some national stories that I'm sure some of y'all are wondering, why didn't the guys touch this story? It's a pretty big story. And the Cuties, the Netflix Cuties movie is one of those stories. And I'm not going to lie here, okay? Sean and I spoke about this a little bit. I had very strong personal feelings about this.
Yeah, and Grant, real quick, live programming here from your producer.
Yeah.
We need to be very careful about the kind of words we use while we're talking about this for Facebook. And normally we don't care about that. But this is a serious topic, and the reason you don't want to say certain words is because I wouldn't say them anywhere. I wouldn't, some of the things that happen in this movie I wouldn't describe out loud to anyone. I'd just say you need to go see it. Yeah. But I just wanted to throw that out there before we started the conversation.
Well, and look, you all know I worked in children's ministry before, doing the law school thing before jumping AFP where I am right now, right? Sean and I both have this feeling. We've talked about this at great lengths, that part of the reason why we didn't bring up this Cuties film before is because it struck us on a visceral level. Okay, it wasn't just this guttural reaction that we were having. It was something that, for Sean and I both, I think we've stared into that abyss for such a long time that it just started staring back on us, and we kind of occasionally didn't like what we saw, type thing. And I'll tell you that abyss out there is absolutely saturated with just terrible stuff being done to children. All right, and I when I say this, I say that in all sincerity. I think the pinnacle of human evil is the perversion of innocence, particularly anything done to a child. That is, it's like the life force of the other side, the life force of the evil man. I'm telling you, there is nothing worse than some of this stuff. So this is part of the reason why it took us such a long time to pick up on this Netflix story. And interestingly enough, or serendipitous or providential, whatever you want to call it, Netflix has now been sued and indicted by a grand jury in Texas. And
the indictment's criminal, not civil, right? Yeah, you said sued. I thought that was criminal charges.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
The charges were for, child things that are illegal. That's all. Just leave it there. But it wasn't a lawsuit. It's criminal.
Yeah, no, good call on that one. And here's the story, man. Just getting through this, I'm gonna, you can read the story for yourself if you want to. It's a pretty short New York Post article. I'm gonna get through and hop some of the words as I need to. But Netflix has been indicted by a Texas grand jury for allegedly promoting lewd visual material of those individuals we spoke about before in connection to the release of the controversial French film Cuties. The grand jury in Tyler County returned the indictment against the streaming giant on September 23rd. Now, that was revealed on Tuesday. Why it took from September 23rd to get to here, I don't know. It's anybody's guess. But nevertheless, it was revealed yesterday. The indictment charged that Netflix, quote, here's part of the quote. I'm going to have to jump some of these terms, but quote, knowingly promoted visual material which depicts the lewd exhibition of the G word or area of clothed or partially clothed children who were younger than 18 years of age at the time the visual material was created, which appeals to the prurient interests in and has no serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. Basically saying the response that the directors and publishers of the Cuties film on Netflix gave previously doesn't matter to us. I don't care what point you were trying to prove. You probably shouldn't do the thing that you're trying to disprove to prove that point. It specifically mentions the award-winning film Cuties, which goes on the French title, yada yada flick, which premiered this year's Sundance Film Festival, follows the stories of an 11-year-old Muslim girl. All right, I don't think we need any of the rest of this. Let me just read what Ted Cruz said, and then I want to get y'all's comments on this. Senator Ted Cruz is among several Washington lawmakers who have called for a Department of Justice investigation into the Netflix film, saying, here's his thing. The video streaming service and content producer Netflix is currently hosting a film entitled Cutie that sexualizes young girls, including through dance scenes that simulate certain activities, and a scene exposed is. You can't even get through some of this.
Hey, they can see it on the screen.
Okay, all right.
So you don't have to read
portion for you, right? So yeah, is that last part true? Okay, so the Senator Cruz quote that I just read.
Grant, I haven't seen it because I'm afraid I would destroy my television.
That's what I'm saying, man.
I don't know, but I'm assuming Ted Cruz knows what he's talking about, or maybe he read, some notes from the court hearing.
All right, so the part that I'm parting to, the part that I'm pointing to here, from the Ted Cruz quote. That very last 4 or 5 words there. If that part by itself actually happens in the film, and I presume some people may have actually seen this film. If it has, let me know. If that part is actually in the film, yes, the part that Sean was just highlighting there, how is that not like prima facie criminal? I mean, on its face. Why? I don't know why you would need to look into anything else. If you've literally filmed that happening in any other context, or that context included, how is that not absolutely criminal? I mean, it seems to be the actual literal definition of what the crime should be. said action, filming said action, putting film out there for video for consumption. Right? I mean, I don't know.
That's against the law, and it's gross, and it's against the law for a reason. It's not like against the law because you're trying to stifle artistic something or other. It's against the law because it's bad. It's bad. It's bad. Netflix.
That's what I'm saying again. Perversion of human innocence.
The best metaphor here, Grant, is like, what if we wanted to do a documentary on why the same age children shouldn't do drugs? So we do a documentary and give them all drugs. That would seem stupid. That would seem dumb. Like watching them smoke crack or something like that on screen. That would be awful. And no one would think that was artistic. No one would think that's proving a point. What if they were all tripping on something, or they were on Molly or whatever, and you saw adults giving, really young children hardcore drugs? That wouldn't make it, and be like, see, this is why kids shouldn't do drugs. And it's like, no,
do this.
This is why you shouldn't be around children. This is a documentary about why some adults are weird. And honestly, it's the same kind of thing. This isn't a movie about why young children shouldn't be in dance classes. This is why certain adults shouldn't be around young children, because they're weird and they make them do things that are awful, that are illegal. But anyway.
Jessica said on Facebook a second ago, by the way, she said, worse than just what we highlighted in a second ago. She said it's bad, bad, bad. Apparently she saw the clip unwillingly. I guess she stumbled across, or someone might have shown it to her or something. But apparently it's worse than just that. And I don't mean to spend so much time in this segment, going back over and rehashing and regurgitating arguments that I'm sure you've already heard about from before. This argument has been laid out several times over on both sides. Now, why anyone out there would even seem to attempt to make the case to defend the film like this, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I seriously don't. And the reasons behind which someone might go out of their way to try and defend a film like this, I don't want to get into those reasons. I mean, personally, I've tried to do that before. Aside from that, I kind of want to bring this up today just to get the opinion on what y'all make of an actual indictment being handed down. Do you make anything of this at all? Do you think more are going to come? Do you think anything is going to happen with this? I mean, we said previously on this very program, we laid out the reasons behind why there is an old adage. Well, old, I say it's like 1987 adage. Nevertheless, at least from the late 80s, the adage has been that you can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich. Meaning if you present it properly, if the prosecutor presents it properly, you can get a grand jury to basically indict anybody on almost anything, even an inanimate object such as a ham sandwich. So maybe there's nothing to this. Maybe there's nothing here. Maybe it's not going to go anywhere. But I personally would like to see a little bit more of this. That's all I'm going to say about that.
I'd like to see some action that deters future things like this.
Yeah.
I'd like to see something in the realm of deterrence. Something that's maybe over the top for this particular situation, but deters people from doing something like this in the future. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Like where it's almost injustice. Like just riding the line of the punishment doesn't fit the crime because it's so extreme. I'd like to see perp walks. I'd like to see people's faces on television so that their faces are something of scorn for all time. I'd like to see people put on this the sex offenders registry for being a part of this movie. That's what I'd like to see, Grant. Things that really hurt people, that really make the pain explicit and obvious to everyone. So everyone feels like justice has been served because everyone is disgusted by this, okay? And the other thing is we need people to be afraid to do projects like this in the future, for fear of indictment or being put on the sex offenders registry or jail time for, certain crimes that I don't want to say certain words, but the crime I'm talking about.
Right.
And I think that's what we need. That's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see almost not quite injustice, because I don't want to see injustice, right? But I want to see like maximum penalty. And then I want to see maximum exposure of that penalty to the general public.
Jessica said in a second, let me say, Kelly said in Facebook a second ago, she said they should go much further, in my opinion, prosecution of the parents for allowing their children in this film. Oh, man,
they're French. That might make it tough.
Yeah, well, no, I hear you there.
But
Yeah, I
there's
do.
Americans who did work to get this on Netflix.
Well, and aside from that, too,
And
weren't these-
anyone who handled it technically was breaking the law, right?
Well, I would think so. And even if I was these girls were what 11, 12 at the time of filming, and there's no way, it's inconceivable to think that the age of consent in France is 11 or 12. There could be no way that that's the case.
It doesn't matter.
maybe-
It's not here
Oh, well, no, I hear you there.
because it's on film. That's
Yeah,
the main problem is there's certain acts and images that were on film and then distributed in the United States. Those are violations of U.S. code.
Yeah.
And probably state codes, probably the California state code and other places. I guess it's against the state of Texas state code because that's where they were indicted.
Jessica said in Facebook, she said she had mothers in one of her groups defending it. She said, I snapped, which I don't often do. It was bad. Again, the sort of compulsion to feel the need to defend something like this. I don't necessarily know, man. I don't know whether there's some American mothers that do the child pageant things and they don't want to have it associated too much with something.
It became a political issue instead of a right and wrong issue. It became a left-right issue. It was a conservative plot of some kind. So some people, because of TDS, just took the other side. There were a bunch of articles from Vox and Atlantic and all these different news sites that are on the left defending this and saying it was a right-wing conspiracy. So people just fell in line. And honestly, that is truly what it is, Grant. It's not the pageant thing. It's not the my kid does gymnastics or, does the whatever with jazz hands. It's not that, dude. It's because it became one of those, I'm going to do what the media told me to do because this is my lane.
So the response you're saying of, I don't think it's right to see children placed in adult situations, that response was deemed as a right-wing conspiracy?
Correct.
Oh, my God.
Correct. I'm trying to find the Vox article right here.
I believe you, man.
Vox, how Cuties, a French movie on Netflix, became part of America's culture war. Here we go. Yeah. I'm showing it to everybody right now on the screen. So this is just like one of thousands of examples, Grant, but Vox really led the charge. Atlantic and others were really and this was like what, September 11th, so almost a month ago, was while we were out of town. I think we were at that Chili's and I was talking to you about this article. But anyway, it got couched as a culture war issue, a left-right issue, and these Republicans are crazy. They're trying to stop art or something like that. I really don't know because I've tried to stay away from this because it makes me want to put my head through a wall,
And honestly, man, this is part of the reason, again, that I didn't get into this story when it first came up, because I don't want to live in a world where I cannot objectively say that the one thing the left and the right can have consensus on is that anything even seeming like pedophilia is bad. Like, I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to live in the world where the objective line that's drawn in the sand is not at least that. At a minimum, just that. Yeah, thanks, buddy. All right, let's go on to the next show.
Well, it's not. By the way, Grant, it's not. Everybody does not agree on that. And
I know.
If
I know,
you go
that's
on
why.
Facebook and there are people who bring up, you just said the P word. They talk about all the P word stories and say, y'all know that these are all connected to the same theory that the world is run by lizard people, right? Right? Like, that's what they do, Grant. And I say that because, there are people in my personal friends list who've posted about that. When they post about the mass arrests and all the children saved and how, and maybe it's someone giving Trump the credit for it or something like that, someone will just comment bomb and be like, what, do you believe in lizard people too? It's somehow defending America's children has become a weird left-right issue, Grant. And it's very, very sad. It's very sad. It's sad for so many reasons, but we'll get into that another time, maybe.
I would maybe hope that some of this, like you said, everything becoming a left-right issue. Everything is about the election now, right? I mean, literally everything is about the election. And let me just pull up these last two articles as we end the program here. We can skip over some of this stuff is super important. We'll get to this tomorrow, though, but it's also a little bit evergreen, as we call it. So DNI has declassified a CIA memo that Comey claimed to have no memory of receiving. This one is basically coming down from Epic Times saying the Epic Times stories are way too long to get into with the remaining 15 minutes of this program. Quick TLDR of that story, though, is that like, hey, director released last week or the week before a quick memo that kind of says, like, we're starting to release knowledge that Hillary Clinton kind of fabricated this whole Russia collusion story from the very beginning. And we're also starting to release information and intelligence that says that, I don't know, maybe CIA Director Brennan and maybe FBI Director Comey also knew about it and might be complicit in it as well. So just follow that story. We'll go over it more tomorrow. But speaking about everything being about the election, there's a couple polls coming out recently that one is just out there. I just want to see what people take on it. And second one is a CNN poll that they just don't get it. So there's a new Michigan poll here. This is coming from Fox News. A new Michigan poll found that Democrat nominee Joe Biden has increased his lead over President Trump in the Wolverine state in Michigan after the first presidential debate last week. Now, that part is very important. After the first presidential debate last week. This is a WDIV Detroit News poll, which if it's a local poll, you can probably guess that it's not going to be more than about 2,000 people that were polled in the state. Not to say that that's unscientific. It's just, it is what it is. It's conducted between September 30th and October 3rd, found that Biden leads Trump by 9 points, 48-39, up from 3 points from its post-convention poll. Now, that swing from 3 to 9 points, it's important to focus on that. But I don't know what the margin of error is. I don't know also how many Democrats they polled as opposed to how many Republicans they polled. It's just something interesting to take in this state of Michigan, who's been in news a lot recently because of a Democrat mayor and a Republican-controlled legislature. Which way is this state going to go? But in the last couple of minutes here, let me jump to this other poll that CNN released. And CNN just gets this way wrong. Completely wrong.
Hey, Grant, just for fun, I went ahead and did the research, and just real quick, it was 600 sampled.
Oh, good Lord.
600 was the sample. A live operator telephone survey was conducted on September 30th through October 3rd as a margin of error of plus or minus 4%, with a 95% level of confidence. 50% respondents were contacted via landline. They don't talk about who they targeted in the methodology.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to dig further.
Margin of error 4. I see it now. Right.
Yep. I'll let you keep going, though. I just wanted to throw that it's not 2,000. That's the super expensive. Only like, who are they? Pew can do those kind of surveys. Local people can't. Local people are usually less than 1,000.
So 600 likely voters, margin of error 4. So call it a 5-point split if you want to, one way or another. There could be margin of error on the other side. Take that up the other way, too. I get that. Nevertheless, the important part that poll focused on is a 6-point swing after the first presidential debate. Now, here's a CNN poll as well. Donald Trump is losing by 16 in a new CNN poll, and that's not the worst news. Is it not, CNN? What's the worst news? Here's the story. With less than a month before the November election, President Donald Trump has hit a new low. He now trails former Vice President Joe Biden by his largest margin, 16 points of any CNN poll conducted with this entire election. I don't mean to be too funny about this, but they go on to say, which, if you are the president or his supporters, is bad, like really bad, they say. But it's actually not the worst news. Now, here is the entire article, and here's where CNN gets this dead wrong. They said, what is the actual worst news from this CNN SSRS poll? They said that honor goes to this, that 9 in 10, 90% of the likely voters in this CNN poll said that their minds are made up when it comes to which candidate they will be voting for this fall. A meager 8% of those likely voters said they might change their mind, while 1%, who are these people, said they had no preference between the candidates as of yet. That's CNN's words. I didn't add it for emphasis. You can see it on your screen right now. So basically what they're saying is that 90% of people have already made up their mind. 8% of likely voters said they might change their mind. And only 1% of those voters said they haven't made their mind up yet. So what does CNN take away from this? At the very bottom of the article, it's in the show notes here. They say to pull off a win or even to get within striking distance, Trump needs to execute a 2-step strategy. 1, peel voters away from their certainty of voting for Biden. And then 2, convince them to vote for him. Really? Really? I don't know, man. I don't know. Let's look back to the first debate for a second.
At this point, most Americans.
let's look back to this first debate for a second. And then let's make a quick prediction as to, I think, what might happen in the second and third debate if and when we have those. Now, if you interpret this aspect of the poll correctly, that aspect being that 90% of likely voters have already made their mind up, I would venture to say it's probably even higher than that. Whatever. Let's go with 90. If you interpret that aspect of the poll correctly, as CNN clearly does not, then you would recognize that each camp should be focusing on getting the most number of registered voters to the poll. CNN just came out and basically told me, let's take the other 8% of likely voters said they could change their mind. I don't think they will. Let's call it 90, 95, 98%. So you want me to focus the entirety of my rest of my efforts on getting the other 2% out there, the other 1% that hasn't made up its mind yet? Why? For what? Come on. For what reason? It's not going to happen. And neither camp is treating it that way, especially Donald Trump's camp. He is not treating this right now about winning independence. He is not treating this right now about winning people shifting over the Democrat side. That has been made up.
That time is over.
It's done.
That was spring and early summer.
Right?
At best.
At best, man.
And that's why the voter registration drive really ended in the summer, too. Because that's when you do. It's from like fall of last year through early summer was his time to convince either new voters to register, Democrats to switch, independents to commit. At this point, it's about getting it's less than 30 freaking days. It's about getting your people who are registered to vote to the polls. And both sides should be focusing on that.
That's what happened during the first debate. This is what I believe Trump's team, primarily, and a little bit of Biden's team, was doing during that first debate. I do not think President Trump, was at all concerned with addressing substantive policy. Now pause for a second, because I know that might sound like a bad statement in and of itself. And maybe it should be. But I remember watching the debate with our Americans for Prosperity Tennessee team. We were all in the same hotel room. And the next morning, I kind of woke up and I thought to myself, there was one scene in particular I'd love to tell a story about, Sean, but I'll let him tell the story.
I took a shot when Biden was like, would you shut up, man? I was like, I'm taking a shot. That was awesome, man.
Anyway, but I remember waking up the next morning and I thought to myself, like, man, I was a little bit depressed after that. Like, there was not a single stitch, not an ounce, not even a mere whiff of substantive policy exchange that happened at all last night. At least not anything memorable. And then I thought, well, even if there would have been, it wouldn't have mattered. Even if they would have spent the entire time being as cordial as possible to each other and try to exchange policy for the sake of policy, none of that would have mattered. It wouldn't have changed my mind. It wouldn't have changed 98% of the minds of anybody else that was watching that last night of that night. And I think that's exactly what each candidate knew. Rather, I believe the intention, because CNN is giving me the data to back this up now, I believe the intention for both Trump primarily and a little bit of Biden was to rile his base up enough, because the intention should be to get as many registered voters to the actual physical polls as possible. The other thing that neither CNN or Biden's team is mentioning or taking into account right now is the utter fiasco that will be the mail-in process across the nation. So when I say the tactic for both Trump and Biden should be, but for Trump it actually is, they don't care about substantive policy, man. If that's the case, Trump would have come out that night looking like, hey, you guys want to talk criminal justice reform? You want to talk about anything that you've been marching these streets for the last couple of months? I am legitimately that candidate. The guy that wrote the crime bill in the mid to late 90s is not your person. Kamala Harris, who made her career off prosecuting those, is not your person.
He actually did mention that.
Act. He mentioned it. Yeah, that's right.
He said, I passed the First Step Act. You passed the 92 crime bill. You said that, what's the Predator quote? I can't remember the Predator quote. Super Predators. Yeah, he said, I passed the First Step Act. You called people super predators. But, like, that's not really substance, is it?
No. Well, and that's the thing is I think if it was to be substantive, then they would have pushed that more. They would have been a little bit more cordial. The headlines the following day would have said, Fox News would have said, President Trump focuses on the right on crime bill and criminal justice reform, blah, blah, blah.
And it wouldn't have been. Let me throw this out there too, Grant, about the debate and about polls and about voting. There's a big difference between someone calling you on your phone probably, excuse me, for like the 10th time, right? And asking you who you're going to vote for. And actually voting. And I think where Trump won the debate the other night was he got Biden to say that the Green New Deal was not his plan. Biden didn't get to talk about Medicare for all. Or he didn't talk about Medicare for all. Biden didn't have a good answer on the Supreme Court for his base. Right? Every other question about about his base, he blunted. Like, if you compare, like, base red meat from each of the two candidates, Trump was just throwing the red meat out there like it was a dang steak buffet. Biden was constantly telling his base, I'm not really your candidate, I'm just your only option. Because his base is the AOC people, right? It's the squad fans, squad fam, you know? And I don't know about you, but I have a lot of leftist friends, and I watch, like, leftist political YouTube channels and things like that. And the biggest fear on the left right now is a lack of excitement for Biden. The message is, don't vote third party. And even if you go watch some candid things, like I was watching last night on Fox News on Martha McCallum, she had on these college students from Utah because they had the vice presidential debate coming up.
Yeah, right.
And they had 3 Democrat folks, college students, who were like leaders in their Democratic Party on their college campus. They kept pushing the don't vote third party, or Biden wasn't even my third choice. That was a big, I think one of the guys who said he was the vice president of the Democrats at Weaver said that Biden wasn't even his 5th choice.
Wow.
You got it? And then the other guy was like, you know, there's a lot of people talking about third party. And I just say, you know, like, Trump is bad. And I think they're having a real problem with excitement. Yeah. And that's why I go back to the beginning of what I said. There's a huge difference between someone calling you 10 times at your house, you finally picking up the phone and say, yeah, if I had to vote right now, it'd be Biden. Because they always phrase the questions that way. If the election were today, would you be voting for blah, 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 blah? And it's like, yeah, well, since you're bugging me about it, I'd probably vote for Biden. But there's a big difference between that guy or female saying that on the phone and filling out a mail-in ballot, getting it in on time, filling it all out correctly, or actually getting up and going to the polls on election day or going to do early voting. There's a big difference. And that gap is excitement. And I think Joe Biden didn't do anything to get his people excited. He didn't do anything to hurt himself, but he didn't do anything to get people excited. And I only say that because the response over the past week has been, I know you're not excited, but still vote for Joe Biden anyway. Where nobody is having to say that to Trump people. Nobody's having to say, hey, you know, I know you like Trump, but you need to vote for him too. No one, there's no excitement gap for Trump. So I just wanted to throw that out there with this poll. Also, the only thing I did find that kind of indicates who they asked was it said between 52 to 53% of the folks polled said they were going to do mail-in ballot. And if that gives you any kind of indication of the breakdown, that's still pretty fair, though, you know? I'd feel it. But it was only 600 people.
And I say this, man, this election in 2020, now more than almost any other election in previous years, is going to be about the number of registered individuals that actually show up to the polls on the day of. And I know that's not just might seem like that's like an axiom, right? I guess it's just true on its face. I get that, but the semantic difference there is vitally important, because this is also the first year that we have the contingency of the mail-in process, and it's exactly what Shine's talking about. Nobody's excited for a mail-in process, and you could say that 90% of the people have decided, but out of those 90% of people that have already decided, what number or what percentage of the registered voter pool is actually going to get out and do something about it? And I do mean show up to the physical polls, because think about it this way, man. Sean and I work for this company, and we go flying around all over the place. We've been to several different states working on several different campaigns, everything from a taxpayer Bill of Rights things in Colorado to a Senate race in North Carolina and everything in between. Right? I mean, we've been all across the country doing this stuff. We know what politics looks like on the ground at most state levels. It's been a pretty cool experience. And we also know that 5 states of the United States do their do their voting process exclusively by mail. Now, out of those 5 states, you can see not just do they have the infrastructure built out in those states, not just does the mail people know how to deliver, not to deliver. Not only have they know how to understand and maintain the ballot harvesting system. The most important aspect nobody's talking about is the citizens themselves know what they are doing. They know whether they've received their ballot or not. They know when to ask for the ballot if it hasn't arrived already. They know how to fill it out. They know where to sign. They know what checks to mark. They know what postage needs to be put on it or not to be put on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, in these 5 states, it's the citizens that have been through years and years and years of doing it that way. Everyone's focusing their attention on whether the mail is going to get it right, or whether there's going to be some nefarious cause going on, or whether there's, I don't know, somebody's going to start throwing away ballots. That's a part of it. But nobody's focusing on the fact that the citizens just don't know how to do it. They've never done it before. So in my opinion now, these 90% of people, as Shine just said, 52% of them has said they're going to do it by mail-in. Out of those 52%, the overwhelming majority, I would think, are probably going to be Democrat. And how much of that percentage is just going to make some small, seemingly insignificant mistake, but will make it legally deficient, meaning it won't be able to be counted, not because of anything the mail has done, not because of anything that there's some ballot that's thrown away, not because of any nefarious plot for ballot harvesting, because they just didn't do it properly. That's why I say, again, I think the intention during these debates is to rile up the base enough to actually show up the physical polls, because nobody's focusing on policy. Everybody's already made their mind up. And you couple this with the final thing of, if you're really going to rely upon the mail-in process, is any state going to get this correct? I mean, correct to the point that they're not going to have an absolute fiasco on the day of. And this whole red mirage thing, man, I'm starting to think that it may not actually be a red mirage. And the last story I want to end with here, man, just because I want to throw it out there, I need people to get about a day worth of marinating on this, because I'm trying to figure out Trump's tactics on a lot of things here. The very last headline, and I know you're going to be upset that we're not diving into this now, but White House blocks new coronavirus vaccine guidelines. Okay, so in this same subheading of everything having to do with the election this year, Trump just got done dealing with COVID. And one of the first things he said when he came back is like, we're going to have this vaccine. It's up and running. It is mere moments away, is his words. Almost an exact quote. Meaning it's just around the corner, just a few weeks away. The point he's making is a vaccine should be available before November 3rd. Now, that poses a very tricky problem for the White House right now, because the FDA has regulations that say you cannot go public with anything until after 2-month deadline of the end of a trial phase. So the very last time a vaccine has been administered in a trial phase, you have to wait 2 months after that. And then if everything is all good, all the I's have been dotted and T's have been crossed. I don't pretend to understand what actually happens behind the scenes. But once that's all been done 2 months later, then you can go public with it. We're well past that point right now. So the FDA is basically saying, even if you want it, even if it was all there, even if we could try and fast track it, like this simple regulatory deadline, we can't meet. And the White House is saying, well, forget about your deadline. I don't care about your deadline. Hit the market with it right now. Now, here's the last portion that I want people to marinate on over the next 24 hours. We might come back and lead the show with this tomorrow. I just don't know if Trump is exactly understanding how much of his base just doesn't want a vaccine to hit the market. And I'm like, it used to be, I'll put it this way, people that would be called anti-vax, people that are not for vaccines in this country, there's this perception that it's primarily on the right. It is not. It is almost a deadline split. I think it's 51%, the last poll I took, 51% qualified leaning right, 49% qualified leaning left, of people that just don't like the idea of vaccines. It is a bipartisan issue down the middle. And you don't believe me? Go look that stuff up. I promise you it is. And there's a lot more of these people than you think are out there. There are several people across every single state in the United States that just don't like the idea of vaccines. Now, for what particular reasons? Go talk to them about it. I'm not going to speak on their behalf. Go ask them about the reasons. And what I'm saying is, I don't know if Trump is calculating that part correct, of rushing a vaccine beyond FDA guidelines to win votes out of this, or to possibly make it look like he has some handle on the COVID situation. But what I'm saying is, I think he might be underestimating the number of people that would see that as a benefit. Do you get what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying with that. Let me know what you think.
I don't think he's worried about him losing votes. He just needs
by doing that?
Yeah, I think he's more worried about blunting media people. Like just making them shut up.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that part's true.
Because, I mean, if you were Trump, it's like if someone's decided to vote for you, for the most part, I'll just say it like that woman who did that article in the New York Times a couple weeks ago, the self-professed lesbian retail store manager, secret Trump voter in Manhattan, New York. She said coming out as a Trump voter would be harder than coming out as a homosexual.
Oh, wow.
So,
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And so what I'm saying is, like, a decision to vote for Trump is like a pretty weighty decision. And that's one you probably don't go back on because of how weighty it is. Mm-hmm. So I don't think he's worried about losing voters. I think he's worried about just getting the media to shut up. or like just blunting it, kind of like the way he did what happened with where he went to the hospital all weekend. It's a way to get everyone to shut up for a day or two.
I hear you.
Not that that means it's a good idea. I'm just saying that's if I were to guess what's going on in his head.
Yeah. Jessica said in Facebook, as we're ending the program here, she said, I'll be voting in person with bells and whistles. Jessica, I'm gonna need some video documentation of said occurrence. We're gonna need pictures and all this stuff. I would love to post it all over the Real News Stuff. You showing up and voting in person with bells and whistles. Jonathan said he'll also be voting in person. Kelly said 100% accurate. Jonathan said mail-in voting will be the worry of all of us come election day. Kelly says, nope, never mandatory vaccines, never. Jonathan seems to agree with her on that for sure. Hey, 10:05 right now, a little bit late. We love each and every one of y'all sincerely. Honestly, it's what we do here. We love on each other. We build with each other. We grow with each other. All those things. Genuine, actual progression. That's what we do. Love y'all for real. See you tomorrow.